Hi, my name's Jeff Frawley, and I'm going to read the opening section to my story, The Dig. The Dig. 1. It began with an exhibition rumbling through town, a massive flatbed truck strapped with something big, the skeleton of a reptile. Ochre bones, mast-like beak, eye sockets deep as buckets. The apparatus swayed, suspended on chains, as the truck pummeled potholes. Several pickups followed in its wake, belching exhaust, headed for the woods. We tugged grandfather from the pub, marveling at those claws. He wore the same look as when certain songs came on the radio, when blood sluiced through the gutter during the spring boar hunt festival. People tottered across the plaza to where the truck disappeared, foothills aflame with maples and aspens. The caravan, we'd later learn, settled outside town, a giant tent pitched over those bones. We huddled inside the Balancing Owl, listening to adults grandfather's age, their cheeks pink with brandy. A fire crackled in the stove. Grandfather said it was no coincidence, all these new exhibits dredging up bones. The world, he said, is waking up to what happened here. For God's sake, it's just a reptile, someone shouted. Someone else said the caravan was an indication of progress, foreigners again feeling welcome to pass through town. Another mentioned the housing permits now offered to outsiders. Grandfather banged his glass, said, "They won't have to dig long to find what they're looking for." Perhaps at this stage he'd already been voted off town council, or perhaps this was one of those final contentious meetings. Or maybe it was simply one of those nights when someone eased the mug from his grip, whispering that things had changed, peace was permanent, there was no need to drink like this every night. He'd taken us in when mother and father vanished. Children at school had teased, said, prison, but grandfather said they'd gone abroad to clear their heads. His rental flat sat above a flower shop run by an elderly woman with whom grandfather once went on a date. Afterwards, he'd lumbered upstairs, groaning he had too much to drink. The woman, later gravely ill, rasped that men in town had made many mistakes, but most regrettable of all was grandfather never asking her out again. When she died, her family sold the shop and we went looking for a home. Landlords eyed grandfather, said they didn't like fusses, all his talk of guilt. We landed at Wilfred's bedhouse near the casino, ghastly drafts and smelly latrines and women howling through the walls. Grandfather drank beer at the beer hall, smuggled us beef sandwiches from the canteen. Then one day he snapped, said he couldn't bear to keep children in such conditions. An old friend offered a cheap rental in the woods, so we hiked a ravine blossoming with spring, reached a logger's house tucked between beeches and maples, creaking in wind, blotchy with mildew. A tall, rusting water tank croaked against the cold. Grandfather said not to climb in, that those vessels were used not so long ago to hide terrible things. The landlord greeted us on the porch with a bottle of brandy. His eyes were blue as marbles. He and grandfather drank in the yard, discussing those old times, the swiftness with which troubles flared up, then, seemingly overnight, died. The landlord said no one in town wanted to live in these woods. He asked if grandfather recognized it, the clearing, the granite outcropping. Grandfather sat up. "Remember," asked the landlord, "that important work we thought we were doing? Those promising ideas, so poorly executed?" Grandfather squinted. Feet drumming, hands shaking, he said this was the opportunity for which he'd been waiting. That autumn, the caravan arrived. Tickets to the tent cost 2 marks. Inside, beneath those massive hanging bones, placards displayed photographs of the excavation effort, the paleontological history of our valley, our glacier-scalped moraines. Children gawked at the spotlit claws, the beaked skull, dagger teeth. A man lectured into a megaphone, said it was unearthed just outside town. He invited us to imagine its once leathered wings. Men in beaked masks wandered the tent, leering at women, eyes bulging and bloodshot, as though they'd witnessed killings in the labor villages from which they surely came. We cowered behind grandfather as he whispered, "How had we not seen the excavation? Were others taking place?" The man with the megaphone cried out, "Things are in your soil, waiting to be plucked." People applauded. Grandfather whisked us outside, whispered to stay away. But the following week and the week after that, we snuck back to the clearing until one night the tent disappeared. Thanks.